The Hoop Heads Podcast is brought to you by Head Start Basketball.
The 4 P's of player development are purpose, pace, passion, and posture.
Xander Smart is the founder and head trainer at Committed to My Craft Player Development in Dayton, Ohio. Xander played his high school basketball at Carroll High School in Dayton. He went on to play 4 years of college basketball at the University of Northwestern Ohio, where he was an academic all-conference selection in the 2016-2017 season. Xander has built Committed to My Craft to train players at all ages and skill levels through his 4 P's of player development: purpose, pace, passion, and posture. Hey Hoopheads, I wanted to take a minute to shout out our partners and friends at Dr. Dish Basketball. Their Dr. Dish shooting machines are undoubtedly the most advanced and user-friendly machines on the market. Sign up now for their Virtual Camp 2.0 featuring 10 days of workouts with pro trainers from the Dr. Dish family. Learn more at drdishbasketball.com and follow their incredible content at Dr. Dish B-Ball on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Mention the Hoopheads podcast and save an extra $300 on the Dr. Dish Rebel, All-Star, and CT models. Visit drdishbasketball.com for details. That's a great deal, Hoopheads. Get your Dr. Dish shooting machine today.
Hi, this is Robbie Lehman, Content Manager at Fast Model Sports, and you're listening to the Hoopheads Podcast.
If you're looking to improve your coaching, please consider joining the Hoopheads Mentorship Program. We believe that having a mentor is the best way to maximize your potential and become a transformational coach. By matching you up with one of our experienced mentors, you'll develop a one-on-one relationship that will help your coaching, your team, your program, and your mindset. The Hoopheads Mentorship Program delivers mentoring services to basketball coaches at all levels through our team of experienced head coaches. Find out more at hoopheadspod.com or shoot me an email directly, mike@hoopheadspod.com. Follow us on social media at hoopheadspod on Twitter and Instagram, and be sure to check out the Hoopheads Podcast Network for more great basketball content.
Prepare like the pros with the all-new Fast Draw and Fast Scout. Fast Draw has been the #1 play diagramming software for coaches for years. You'll quickly see why Fast Model Sports has the most compelling and intuitive basketball software out there. For a limited time, Fast Model is offering new subscribers 10% off Fast Draw and Fast Scout. Just use the code SAVE10 at checkout to grab your discount, and you'll be on your way to more efficient game prep and improved communication with your team. Fast Model also has new coaching content every week on its blog, plus play and drill diagrams on its Playbank. Check out the links in the show notes for more. Fast Model Sports is the best in basketball.
Grab a pen and some paper before you listen to this episode with Xander Smart from Committed to My Craft Player Development. Hello and welcome to the Hoopheads Podcast. It's Mike Klinzing here with my co-host Jason Sunkle tonight, and we are pleased to welcome Xander Smart from Committed to My Craft Player Development. Xander, welcome to the Hoopheads Pod.
Hey, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Excited to have you on. Want to dive into what you've been able to do with your player development business in a very short time as a young guy. Really curious to dig in and see how you got that done, what your philosophy is, and we're going to get into all that as we go through the pod. Want to start out by going back in time to when you were a kid. Tell us a little bit about your first experiences with the game of basketball.
So I picked up a basketball at a young age just because for a while, I was the youngest of 3 brothers. So I had 2 older brothers, and then my dad was always in the gym taking us around to the places that he would play. And we'd be off on the sidelines, dribbling a ball, shooting around when we were allowed to, probably dribbling a ball onto the court while they were playing and getting yelled at. But I was just, from as long as I can remember, I was always in the gym with my brothers or with my dad. And then we had a hoop in our driveway and it had a light on it. So we could be out there as late as we want. And we even used to get yelled at by the neighbors for being out there too late. But I was kind of just thrown into basketball and all sports really, because we were a sports family, and being the youngest of the 3 brothers and then having my dad be the coach, even if I wasn't on a team, I was always at practices. So for a couple years before I even started playing on a team, I had gone through a couple seasons of practices just because I was always at my brother's practices. And then if they had 9 one night or they needed somebody to pair up with somebody for a drill, I was going through the practice and doing all those things at a young age. So that kind of really sparked my my love for the game, and then it just continued from there.
Was keeping up with your brothers a big part of what made you so competitive? I grew up with only a sister, and so I always, when I think about kids that I grew up with who had brothers, whether they were the older brother or they were the younger brother, it just seemed like those families with lots of boys were super competitive, and the boys were always killing each other, whether it was on the football field, whether it was basketball, whatever it was. So what do you remember about competing with your brothers, both from a actual playing against them, but then also maybe just the mental side of wanting to try to do what they did?
Yeah, we were an extremely competitive family. It doesn't matter if it was Monopoly or basketball or ping pong. Like we've yelled at each other, you know, gone in the house crying, gotten in fights just because of how competitive we are. And being the youngest one, we had a lot of other kids around the neighborhood, so they would play pretty competitive, you know, games of 21, football in the backyard, wiffle ball, and they didn't like it if somebody was kind of slowing down the game or it was unfair because the young guy was playing. And so my brothers were like, if you want to play with us, then you actually have to be good. You know, you have to be able to keep up. And so for me, it was kind of always that challenge to be able to compete. And then once I started to see a little bit of success against some of the older guys in whatever sport, you know, you kind of hang on to that, and it really drives you to do it even more and find those fields where the older guys are playing and tag along with your brothers to the high school open gyms. And so having 2 older brothers, I would say that's where I get a lot of my competitiveness from. And the crazy thing is now, even though none of us are still playing, the 4 of us, because I have a younger brother as well, we still play in a men's league together every Sundays, and we're extremely competitive with that.
Nice. Does your dog play too?
Yeah, I'm trying to get her to be quiet.
That's all good, man. No worries. That's funny. So when you think back to that time, was basketball always your number one, or at one point was maybe another sport first in your heart?
I was always one of those type of kids that whatever sport I was playing at the time was going to be my favorite sport, whether it was basketball, baseball, or football. Those were kind of the 3 main ones I played. My mom will be mad if I don't include volleyball in that as well. But whatever sport I was in, I think it was just because I was so competitive, and just being able to compete and go out there and try and win. Whatever sport I was playing was always my favorite until I got to high school. And then it really started to separate. And I think practices were a big thing to do with that. I just enjoyed basketball practices a lot more than baseball and football practices. So I really started to focus in on that. My junior year was the first year that I only played basketball. And that was my first year playing AAU as well.
When you started to focus in, what did that look like? How did that change what you did in your off seasons, where maybe before, I'm assuming that if it was baseball season, you were playing baseball. If it was football season, you were playing football. And now you start to zero in on basketball and you start putting together a plan for how you want to get better. So what did that look like when you started to focus in solely on basketball? How did that change what your summer looked like or what your off season looked like?
Yeah, it changed it dramatically because instead of having to split time with all these different sports, I was able to be at everything that we had for our basketball team, as well as doing everything on my own to continue to get better, because I wasn't in football practice wearing myself out or in baseball practice till 9 o'clock at night. And then I was able to play AAU as well that year, which I hadn't played. And then when I met all of my AAU teammates, I saw what other players that were trying to play in college were doing in their free time. And when I was in high school, I never worked out with a trainer just because I was so naive to the basketball world that I didn't know that's what people did in the off season. And so my schedule just became all basketball, and I was going to any open gyms that I could go to. I was shooting all the time, and a big part was that's when I really fell in love with weightlifting as well.
When you were working out on your own, how did you come up with the ideas, the plans for what you're going to do? Was it kind of haphazard? Were you on YouTube trying to figure out and looking at drills? How did you put together what you were going to do on a given day when you went to the gym?
That's a good question, because it kind of developed over time. When I first started becoming a full-time basketball player, I really just went in and got shots up because I didn't understand everything that went into skill work and skill development. I just thought it was about shooting the ball. So I had a routine where I would just go in and, do 5 spots, 5 makes there, maybe go elbow to corner, get some shots there, shoot some threes, shoot some free throws, and then I would go lift. And that would kind of be my routine. But then once I got to college and I was doing some of my own workouts, I was all over YouTube, and Instagram got really big when I was in college with the videos. And that's when a lot of the trainers started to become known. And so then I would kind of write some stuff down, and that's where I started to develop my creativity to make up certain drills that work on things, or to pattern something a certain way, was because I was kind of my first client, because I never had a trainer. So I was always working myself out.
Did you feel like once you started being more purposeful with what you were doing with your workouts, that you got better and improved a lot faster than you had when you were just kind of going in and, as you said, getting shots up?
Most definitely. And that's actually one of my keys to my training philosophy is purpose. So I have 4 and we can get into this a little bit later, but I have 4 P's to player development. And the first one is actually purpose. And when you're working with, or when you're doing skill development or player development, what you're doing has to prepare you for the 5-on-5 game. It doesn't necessarily have to directly translate to the 5-on-5 game, but it has to prepare you to play 5-on-5. And then as well, with your purpose, it has to be in alignment with your goals. And when your workouts are purposeful in those 2 areas, then it's a lot easier to see growth in a shorter amount of time.
Absolutely. I think that there's such an advantage today in kids being able to have resources, whether that's an actual human being who's a trainer who's putting together that plan for them, or if a kid goes out on their own. There's so many great resources being able to find drills, ideas, things that you can work on to improve and get better and make your skills into what you want them to be. Whereas I think when I was a kid, I tell people all the time, like I used to just do, basically I had 2 workouts. I had a workout that I would do by myself when I was just shooting on my own. And then if for some reason I had a partner to shoot with, then I had another routine where, the partner would rebound me and for me, we'd trade off, whatever it might be. But I really only had 2 workouts. I mean, I did that probably for my last 2 years of high school and my 4 years playing college basketball. So it's like 6 years of the same 2 workouts. So I probably got pretty good at those. I probably got pretty good at those 2 workouts. I'm not sure how much better it was really making me compared to what I would be doing if I were growing up, if I were growing up today and having access to all the technology and just the knowledge that's out there from coaches, trainers, things that you can find on the internet. To me, it makes it so much easier to improve and get better. When did the idea of playing college basketball get on your radar? When did you start thinking that, hey, it was a realistic possibility that it might be something that you would be able to do after high school?
To me, it was always a realistic possibility. I was always that kid who would dream of playing in the NBA or playing in the NFL. And to me, I was going to end up in one of them. It just kind of depended on which sport it was going to be, because I was a dreamer. And so I always kind of had this thought that I was either going to play one of the 3 in college. And then once I narrowed my focus down to basketball, it really wasn't a question of whether or not I was going to play basketball in college. It was just where I was going to play. And which is kind of crazy for me to think about because I knew nothing about the recruiting process. I have no clue why I was so sure. I just knew I was going to find a way to get to college and play basketball. So it was always a dream of mine, but I always kind of had a feeling that I was going to get there.
All right, before we get into the process of how you chose a school and then your college career, what's your favorite memory from high school basketball?
Oh, there's so many that are going through my head right now. My favorite memory, it would probably have to be when we ended up beating our rival in double overtime. And at the end of regulation, I hit a layup to tie the game to send it into overtime, and then we ended up winning in double overtime. And we won in pretty dramatic fashion. And the student section from our school ended up running onto the court. So that's something that I'll always remember.
That's very cool. Not everybody gets an opportunity to experience that. And I think when you get to do it, especially if you do it there and you got your students and your friends and your family there with you, that's just something that you're never going to forget. That you're going to be 90 years old still telling that story. But pretty soon it'll probably be a dunk or it'll be a half-court three-pointer or something. You'll change that story around. So it's fun. I got a memory like that too, and I tell people all the time, I don't even know now. It was actually on video. And I'm not even sure that I remember very much of what my actual feeling was because I've seen the video so many times that most of my memories are surrounded by the video as opposed to what my actual experience was. So, but it's something that's in my head. It's always going to be there. And it's a story that I continue to tell. My kids are probably sick of hearing me tell them about the shot that I made and this and that. So at any rate, college basketball, talk about your recruiting process, how you end up at the University of Northwestern Ohio, what that looks like, and just how you went about the process, again, as a kid who, just as you said, maybe didn't know a lot about the recruiting process going into it.
Yeah, I was pretty naive to how offers worked and how college coaches contacted you. And luckily, my parents were very supportive with if me or one of my brothers had something that we expressed to them that we wanted to do, they also my sister as well. I keep forgetting her. But they would find a way to help us to get that done in any way that they could. And so they set me up with a recruiting website to kind of make a profile and get my name out there. And they educated us a little bit on how everything worked. But then once I got into college, I learned that it was not that they were wrong, but there was just so much that went into it that even a recruiting site isn't going to be able to tell you everything that you can gain through the experience. But I didn't have too many offers. Because of whatever financial situation, I was looking to get a scholarship to go play. So I didn't really look into the Division III route, which now I know that there could have been opportunities that I could have looked at in that way. But I had a couple of NAIA offers, and it just came down to UNOH ended up being the best of the offers that I had. And like I said, I always had in mind that I was going to go play in college. So that being the best one out of the offers I had, I chose to take that. And then I ended up staying there for 4 years, and it was one of the best decisions I've ever made.
What was the adjustment like both on and off the floor when you transitioned from high school to college?
On the court was probably a lot harder to transition to than off the court. On the court was a lot more physical and a lot more athletic than I was used to. And off the court, the college stuff was really the school and the living was kind of the easy part. And going to a private school and having the upbringing that I did, I was very thankful when I got to college. For a lot of the beatings and groundings that I got, because I realized how much it prepared me for the off the court stuff. But then on the court, like I said, it was just a lot more physical. The game was a lot faster. And I just wasn't expecting it to be as fast as it really was. And that was at an NAIA school. So it took me about a year to a year and a half to really adjust to the speed and the physicality of how everybody was playing.
When you first got to school, what were your career plans? Did you have an idea of what you wanted to do? Did you see coaching being a part of your future at that point when you first started school, or were you still focused on being a player?
I was focused on being a player, but I was starting to think more and more about it because at that time I had to pick my major, and I went into sports marketing and management. And the main reason was because I had to pick a major to go on my visit so they could give me the tour kind of guided towards that major. And I committed to the school, and I never really switched it. And then, so I did that for a year, and then I switched over and did forensic accounting. And so I was an accounting major, and I actually thought for a while that I was going to just get my CPA and be an accountant and work for an accounting firm, and then, probably coach my kids or coach on the side. It wasn't really until the end of my college career when I really had to look at what I wanted to do, kind of for my next life, post player. And that's when I got steered into training. And then I dove in and haven't really looked back.
All right. So tell us the genesis of that story. How do you get involved in the training world? Is there a mentor? Is it an idea that you find and see and look at? Wow, hey, I see some guys doing this and having some success. I think I can do it based on what I've done to help myself get better. How did you get to the idea that going into training maybe is the way you wanted to go, as opposed to, let's say, becoming a college coach or going and maybe getting a teaching certificate so you could teach and coach at the high school level? Why training?
I really feel like looking back that after looking at the path that I took and how my college career went, I feel like I was forced into training. And maybe not forced, but guided into training, just with the different assistant coaches that I had that would be the trainers for our team. I ended up getting real close to all of them, but each coach, from my sophomore, my junior, and my senior year, I had a different assistant coach that would work me out each year. And so I kind of got 3 different perspectives on player development. But then at the same time, I also met 3 guys that I really looked up to, and I thought they had a really good brain for the game of basketball. And so that was the first part. And then I really needed to improve on my ball handling going into my senior year. And our point guard had really good handles. And so I asked him how to get better with my handles. And he was like, really, you just have to dribble every day. Like, if you set a goal to dribble for 15 to 30 minutes every day in the off season, then there's no way you're not going to have a good handle by the time you get to next season. And so I really took that to heart. And for a couple of weeks, I just saw how many days in a row can I do 30 minutes of ball handling. And then the next thing you know, it turned into a whole spreadsheet. And I did, for 236 straight days, I did 30 minutes of ball handling. And it ended up being more of a mental thing than it did physical. But through that process, I eventually got tired of the ball handling drills I was doing. So I was looking for more. And that's when a lot of the trainers that you see now, Tyler Relf and Drew Hanlon and Jordan Lawley, that's when they started to really become popular on Instagram. And I was seeing what they were doing. And kind of like you said, I was like, hey, I think I could do that. And I think I could show some people how to improve at basketball. And then my teammates were seeing me doing the ball handling drills, and they were like, hey, can we hop in with you? And I was like, oh yeah, sure. And then my 30 minutes of ball handling ended up taking an hour and 15 minutes. And so I didn't feel like I really got much out of that day. So the next day I was like, okay, I'll come in at 12. You guys come in at 12:45, and I'll put you guys through it. And so that was kind of a couple weeks before the season. So I think I did, because I've tracked it, I think I did 10 workouts before my senior year. And then, so then my senior year goes by, and the day after our season ended, the red shirt on our team, who didn't play at all, he just texted me out of nowhere and said, hey, can we get in the gym? And I was like, man, I just lost, I just played my last game. I don't want to go back in the gym. But for some reason, I went in there and I put him through a workout, and it was really the best thing for me that day. And so for 2 weeks, me and him just worked out. And then next thing you know, we had a couple of players that were going to transfer from our school, but me and them still had a good relationship, and they were going to finish up the semester. So they said, hey, can we get some workouts in? So I started working with them. And then some of the guys that were returning saw that we were doing workouts, and they asked the coach, hey, can we work out with Xander instead of working out with the coaches? So they would do some work with me. And our gym in the Lima area was just a place that everybody that was involved with basketball would go to train, because we kind of had an open door policy, and we had a gun that people could get shots up on. And then we would have runs as well with the college players. And So there was always just pro players and different college players from the Lima area in our gym. And once they saw that I was training the players, they would be in after us, and then they would ask, hey, can we come in at this time tomorrow? And that's where I started training. I wasn't charging anybody because I didn't have to pay for the gym time. And it was, I didn't think I should be charging anybody at that time. And those players really taught me how to train and how to build relationships with players. And then once I graduated from there, I moved down to Dayton and just started everything that I built up in Lima, and I just brought it down here.
All right, so I want to get into that in a second, but I want to jump back to these workouts that you're doing with your former teammates and guys that are just showing up at the gym. Obviously, you have to be doing something right in order for yourself to get noticed by these other guys who are coming in the gym, and then for people to want to come back and do multiple workouts with you. So what do you think you were doing a really good job of, that when somebody worked out with you, then they went and told a buddy, or they said, hey, this has really worked for me, I want to come back, or somebody's just walking through the gym and they see you working with a player or a group of players. What do you think they noticed about you or about the workouts that you were putting together that sort of led to that word of mouth that you were describing?
It's actually kind of funny because I look back on those workouts that I did at my college when I was still finishing up my degree, and I just think about how bad of a trainer I was. and maybe I'm probably being too hard on myself, but I think for the players that were working out with me, and what the players saw was just the consistency and the commitment. Because it didn't really matter what day it was. If I could fit them in the schedule when I was first starting out, I would get anybody in the gym. So I think that meant a lot to the players. And then also the commitment for them, knowing that I was going to be down there, no matter what drill I was putting them through, that I was going to be hustling or playing hard defense, or, I was going to be back in my dorm room studying, looking at drills to do, having new things for them, sending them different clips. I think just them knowing that I was putting the work in to be the best that I could be, I think they really saw that, and that's why they were willing to give me a chance.
What are you better at when you're describing the fact that, man, those workouts weren't what I would do today? What's better about what you're doing today than what you were doing then? Back
then, I was just putting players through drills. I would see a drill on Instagram or YouTube, and I would put the player through the drill, not really knowing why we were doing it. Or maybe I would say, okay, this is why we're doing it, but I'm just really regurgitating what I heard on the video. And what I do now is, instead of learning drills, I started to learn the game. And when you learn the game and create the drills from the game, you know what you're talking about, because you've created the drills based on what you've seen from the game and what you've seen work and not work. And so that I think is the biggest difference, is that back then I would learn drills and then put players through drills. But now I really just study the game and see what's effective and what's not effective. And I base my drills off of what I know about the game. So that to me means that you're watching a lot of film. What type of film are you watching? Are you watching college? Are you watching pro? What kinds of things are you looking for when you're watching film? Just describe your process for discovery of the types of things that you're going to then use to put into players' games as part of their workouts. With film, it's a few different things. I'm just a basketball junkie, so I could watch a sixth grade CYO game. I could watch a high school JV game. I could watch any type of game and pull something from it, because I work with players from all levels. So whenever I'm watching a live game or I'm watching something on TV, I'm not really watching it for to see who wins. I'm watching it to learn new things and see what types of players are doing what, because the game continues to evolve, and I'm constantly seeing players do new things and be consistent with newer things. So I think it's important to watch the game as it's happening, in regular time. But also, I've been blessed to work with some pretty good players, And that's one of the things that builds credibility with players now is the film study. And so a lot of times, especially with the quarantine, I just study the players that I work with, and I'll do film breakdowns for them. And I have a YouTube page, but it's really just for a library for me to keep the videos. But I just study the players that I work with, and from that, I've kind of built a curriculum. And I think that way it's real, because there are actually players that I've seen do the moves or play a certain style. And so I've been able to talk to them and pick their brain about why they do certain things and when they do it. And so I'm able to help other players to be effective doing that type of stuff as well. So I've really just built my curriculum off of the players that I've worked with, and I study their film. And it's enjoyable. I'm always learning something, and then I'm able to send them different things that shows them that I'm locked in on their game and investing time in them outside of our workouts.
I think that's critical when we talk to, whether it's a high school coach or a college coach, and consistently, what do they tell us? That relationships are the lifeblood of what they do as a coach. In order to be able to have success, build the type of teams that they want to build, those relationships and that trust is so important. I think training-wise, it's the same thing. Like, you putting the time in to study your player's film, to break that down, to be able to come back to them with a personalized plan and a knowledge of their game and what they're all about. Talk about building trust and building a relationship with a player, where why wouldn't you come back to somebody who's going to put that kind of time in and dedicate themselves to your improvement as a player? To me, it makes a ton of sense. You mentioned a couple minutes ago that you felt like when you first started that you shouldn't be charging people. Well, at some point, if you're going to make a living as a basketball trainer, you have to transition from just doing some workouts with your buddies and former teammates to actually getting some clients in the door and deciding that you're going to charge people for your services. So what was that experience like for you? I remember when I stepped away from high school coaching, and this was probably back in 2009, 2010, and decided I was going to do a little training. And I remember that when I first started charging people, it was really, really hard for me to tell them how much it was going to cost. And then after I had done it for a year or two, and I had more people probably than I could handle, I wouldn't even bat an eye when somebody would try to start to negotiate with me. I would just say, look, this is the price, and if you don't want to pay it, then you need to find somebody else. So what was the transition like for you from going from, hey, I'm doing this on the side as a favor to some guys that I know, to now I really want to think about making it a business? What did that feel like, and how did you handle that transition? Because I think there are probably people out there in our audience that have thought about maybe getting into the training business. I think this is something that trainers have questions about and sometimes struggle with.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I got pretty lucky just with my situation. When I was at school, I didn't have to pay for the gym time, and I could just use it whenever it was free. So I didn't really have any overhead. So I was able to work anybody out for free and not really be out anything other than some of my energy for that day. But so then once I graduated college and I moved from Lima to Dayton, not many people knew me in Dayton, and nobody had really worked with me yet. So that's when I started to charge players. So I in a way, I left my free clientele in Lima, and I moved home. And then I was, whenever people reached out to work out with me, I had a little bit of a reputation with some of the players that I worked with in Lima. So I was able to charge at that point based off of that. But for me, when I moved back home, I worked at an Air Force base as a financial manager for a year while I was training on the side. And so that also allowed me some freedom to not really have to worry about the amount of money that I was making from training, because it wasn't my full-time job. And so that allowed me to continue to work with some players on the free side, or, have a professional player or a high-level college player take a chance on me and allow me to work them out to gain the credibility and to take that to other people. And so in that situation, I feel like I got pretty lucky, but I also kind of set it up that way. But it was kind of funny. The last week I was in Lima training. So I wasn't training anybody, and I never asked anybody for money. Nobody ever asked me. And then a pro player came to town, and I worked him out all week, and he paid me every single day. And his name is Max Landis, and that'll go a long way, that has gone a long way with me, and I'll never forget that. Just because he respected my time and he respected the energy that I was putting in, and to me that's the definition of a pro. It is not just because he paid me and had the money to pay me, but because he had the respect to value my time and what I was doing for him.
That's very cool. I think not everybody would do that. And the fact that he was willing to do that, and I'm sure that gave you some confidence that, hey, here's this guy that I'm working out, that he's a pro player and he respects me, respects what I'm doing, respects my time, as you said. And I'm sure that gave you confidence as you move forward in your training career. You mentioned a little bit about doing it on the side. Did you have thoughts that you wanted to do it full time, or when you were in that year, did you think, I'm going to just continue to do this on the side, see where it goes? Or what was your thought process in terms of thinking whether you could make a go of it to be a full-time trainer?
My thought process was that I was in that job as short as I could possibly be, and whenever I could take it full time, I could take it full time. And luckily, I'm a few years out now, so I can say that without feeling too bad. But yeah, I always wanted to be a full-time trainer. The job that I was working was just a means to an end, and I made some lifelong relationships, and so I don't regret the time that I spent there, but I'm definitely happy with what I've been doing the last few years. And so for me, it was just kind of a timing thing too, because with training, it's seasonal. So I was able to kind of work through the fall and the winter. And then when the summer started to hit, that's when I was able to quit right in the middle of June. So I was able to get that full off season. So I was able to work for the first half of the year, and then I was able to train for the second half of the year. And so that really kind of kickstarted my business and set me out on the right foot, especially going into the pandemic.
Are you tired of slipping and sliding on the court and sticky sheets just aren't giving you grip? Grip Spritz solves this problem without having to lick your hand to clean your shoes. Grip Spritz is used by countless AAU, high school and college programs, semi-pro teams, as well as NCAA athletes and G League players. Unlike other products, Grip Spritz has solutions for individual players, not just entire teams. We've used Grip Spritz at our Head Start basketball camps and players love it. To keep you and your team from slipping and sliding, visit gripspritz.net to learn more. What was the biggest challenge of getting things started on a full-time basis?
Just gym time. Gym time is the biggest thing. I was training out of high schools. I was training out of the YMCA, and then finally I was able to get connected with a place that had a court in a warehouse, and they had a team that used it for practice from November to February, but outside of that, they didn't really have anybody coming in, and it just ended up being the perfect situation for me. And once I was able to secure that really kickstarted my business. But I had quit my job without having that facility, just knowing that I had to free up my time in order to be able to find a place that could accommodate what I wanted to do with my business. And so I took a little bit of a chance, but it ended up paying off, and I've been training ever since then.
Describe your process for having a discussion with a facility, whether that's a high school, whether that's the facility in the warehouse. What do those conversations look like when you're talking to them about wanting to come in and train? Because we all know that, as you said, getting gym time is a challenge. There are some school districts, schools, facilities that don't want you in there, or they want to charge you an exorbitant amount to use their facility, which is probably otherwise sitting empty. So just maybe what's your negotiating tactics, or how do you go in? What advice would you have for a trainer who's looking for a place to train when they go in and talk to a facility? What was your process for having that conversation so that you could get the gym time you wanted at a fair price that would enable you to make a living doing what you're doing?
The biggest thing with gym time is relationships and providing value for people. And so my kind of strategy when I started off was I would try to build a relationship with a coach or with players I knew that could get into the gym or with the people at the YMCA. And so then, a lot of coaches have kids and the coaches' kids want trained. So if I work a coach's kid out for an hour and a half, then he lets me stay in the gym for the rest of the evening, I can schedule, 3 more hours. And so that was my strategy. And that way I was able to have no overhead. And so I would just develop relationships. And I had, 4 or 5 gyms that I was able to kind of piece my schedule together and make it work for all my clients. But now that I was able to get the warehouse gym, it's just been much easier to have one facility that everybody can come to. And I think when you build the right relationships, you just get put around the right people. And that's what happened with me and the owner of the building that I'm at. And he has a son, and his son comes in and does training, but he's just a really good guy. And I don't think you're going to find too many business owners that have the mind that he has. And for him, everything that we do back there in the warehouse is kind of a bonus because his kid gets to be around it, and we have baseball back there too as well. So I'm in a really good situation with where I'm at.
What's your process for scheduling your training with clients? How do they go about getting on your schedule? I know one of the things that was a challenge for me was trying to carve out regular time for every client. So somebody wanted to train at such and such a time on such and such a day. And if I couldn't make that work, either because of my own schedule or because of the gym schedule, as you said, that consistency is so important. So how do players schedule with you, and how do you keep on top of that?
Scheduling has probably been one of the most overlooked parts of getting into this full time for me. I didn't realize how much I would be using my phone and talking to people. And the best thing that I did was I got a second line and transferred all of my contacts for basketball over to one phone so that I could keep everything in one place. But for me, I just have players text me or parents text me, and they let me know what days and times that they're available. And then I piece the schedule together from there, because I'm very particular about what players work out with who, and not in a sense of this player from this school can't work out with this player from this school, but I like to have players that are gonna push each other and challenge each other to be better, and so I like to have people that are gonna be similar size and position and skill set, and so I'm very particular on who works out with who in that regard. So that kind of makes my schedule a little bit more difficult. But that way I think we can be really efficient in the gym and the players can get the most out of the workouts. But then also on the flip side, you have a lot of, parents and players that want to come in at a specific time, or they want to work out with this group of players, or they want to do only individuals. And that gets kind of hectic, especially when you try to appease everyone and get everybody their times, because at the end of the day, you're not going to be able to get everybody the time they want. And you have to be able to say no and to tell people that if they want to come in, that these are the times that you have, and be okay with them saying that they can't make it at those times.
How do you look at training an individual player by themselves versus a group? What are the things that you try to do with a kid when you're working with them on their own versus when you have 2 or 3 kids at a workout? How do you structure each of those scenarios to make sure that you're getting the player what they need? Obviously, when you have multiple players, you can have them going against one another. You can make it more game-like. When you have an individual player, you may be able to zero in more on the details of a particular piece of footwork or skill. So just walk me through what it looks like when you're working with an individual versus when you're working with a group.
I think in both scenarios, you have to make sure that they're competing, and especially in the individual workout, because like you said, with the group workouts, they can compete against other players. They can do game-like situations. But in the individual workout, it's still important to compete. And I think the two ways that you can compete, are against yourself or against the time. And so in an individual workout, it's important, I think, to still make those competitive so that you're getting the game pressure and the game like reps, as well as working on more technical things than you would maybe in a group workout. When players come in individually, because I group a lot of the players together. I don't do as many individual workouts because I think players can push each other harder than they can push themselves. And so when we do have an individual workout, a lot of it will be centered around shooting, if that's something that they really, really need to work on, as far as mechanics, because that's harder to do in a group workout. It's easy to get a lot of shots up, but it's harder to focus on one little thing or structure drills that really hold them accountable to do one certain thing with shooting. But then also kind of every aspect of the game. If ball handling is what they really need to work on, then if they're in an individual session, we might do 50 to 60% of that being ball handling if that's their main area of focus. So I think with the individual workout, it's just about making sure that it's competitive and then making sure that it has the most purpose and is really in alignment with that specific player's goals and whatever is going to help them get the best, the quickest.
So with those group workouts and you're putting the kids together, I'm assuming that in some cases when you put them together for the first time, the kids maybe don't know each other. And so they got to get to know each other as you go through and they're working out together. And you can put them up against and compete, as you said, so that they're trying to get the most out of it. Are you thinking back to earlier in our conversation when we talked about film work and you sharing things with the players about their own game? Do you share things with those players that they have to do? I don't know if homework's the right way to say it, but when you're sending them those clips, I'm assuming that you expect them to have reviewed things that you've sent to them so that when they come in, you're not spending 10 or 15 minutes of that workout time explaining and talking through things that you've probably already sent them to do in advance. Is that question, if that question makes sense?
Yes. I'm kind of sporadic with the videos that I send players. But when a lot of times I will send the younger players that I work with a film study of the professional or college player. And so if I'm watching it, then I expect them to watch it, especially once I've clipped it up and turned it into an easy 10-minute YouTube video. And so then we can talk about that type of stuff. But I'll find different videos from places and I'll have videos saved on my phone that I'll see something happen in a session and I'll go over and put everybody in a group chat and text them that video and have them watch it because it related to what we were working on. But yeah, that's a great way to just build that relationship and that rapport with players, is to give them things to do outside of the workout. So that way they have to think about the things that you're doing in the workout outside of the actual workout time.
If you had to give some advice to the parent of a player, and you can pick any age or maybe it applies across all ages, about what they should look for in a trainer and what makes a trainer someone who's really going to truly have an impact on their child, both as a player and as a person, what should parents look for? And I guess going along with that, what's your sales pitch when somebody comes in and says, hey, we're considering working with you, Xander. Can you tell us a little bit about your philosophy or what you do? What should parents be looking for when they're considering who they want their child to work with when it comes to basketball training?
I think a big thing for finding a trainer for your kid is finding someone that you can trust and that your kids can trust. I think trust and building that relationship is the biggest thing. If the trainer isn't able to have your son's ear or their attention, then you probably need to find a new trainer because something just isn't clicking with that kid. But I think a big thing with trainers is to just make sure that what they're doing has purpose and that they're leading by example. Because I think a lot of kids are going to pick up on how a trainer is and what they stand for more than they're going to pick up on what drills they put them through at the end of the day.
You mentioned earlier your 4 Ps. So can you go through and share those with us and how they tie into your overall philosophy and the success that you've been able to have with Committed to My Craft at this point?
So the 4 Ps are actually something that has been developed over the last 3 or 4 years. And I really started to define them. I read Coach Cupp's book. He's a popular coach here in the Dayton area, and he just released a book. And I read it, and he was talking about defining your values. And so I always had the 4 Ps of player development, but it was just in the recent months that I finally defined what they actually are and what they look like. And the 4 Ps of player development are purpose, pace, passion, and posture. All right, and with each one of those, there's a few different elements to each one. So we got into purpose a little bit earlier. The purpose of the workout has to prepare you for 5-on-5, and it has to be in alignment with your goals. Whatever your goals are, if you want to become a better shooter, if you want to make the varsity team, if you want to become a better ball handler, whatever your goals are, the workout has to be in alignment with those. And then pace also has a few different meanings. Part of pace is, basketball is played with a certain pace, and especially when you have the ball in your hands, you have to play with pace. You have to change speed. You have to change direction. When you're cutting, when you're coming off a ball screen, you have to change speed. You have to change directions. But pace is also having a sense of urgency when you're in the gym. Pace is not dawdling in between drills. Pace is kind of stealing time, stealing inches. If you're in the gym for 60 minutes, having a good pace to your workout is not having a lot of dead time, and it's getting the most out of that 60 minutes. And then the next one is passion. And the first word that I always think of when I think of with passion is just extra. The players are going a little bit harder than somebody else. They're doing a little bit more. They're coming in the morning. They're hustling harder in between when they're running from spot to spot rather than just jogging. Passion is competing. And the quote that I think of for passion is winners always do more. Winners are going to go the extra mile. And then the last one is posture, and posture in a literal sense and also in a mental sense, because posture, when you're playing the game of basketball, you have to keep your chest up and you got to keep your chin up. In most athletic stances, when you start to get your chest down and your chin is down, you're going to end up losing your balance, and you're just not going to be successful in whatever basketball move you're trying to make. So with posture, you have to have your chest up and your chin up, but also having good posture is having good body language, which I think is very important for basketball, but especially in a workout, because a lot of players that have poor body language leave the gym feeling like they got worse. And the same player or a different player could go through the same workout, kind of perform the exact same way, have positive body language the whole time, and leave the gym feeling a lot better. And so those to me are kind of the 4, in my opinion, those are the 4 main things that you have to have for player development that's going to make you the most efficient and help you get the best results.
Let's say you have a player that you bring on board. It seems like it's going to be a good fit, and you do a couple workouts with the player, and they're just not holding up their end of this bargain. They're not living up to those 4 Ps. How do you have those difficult conversations with a player, a parent, where you say, hey, either you've got to step up to the plate and get these things done and make them a part of who you are, or maybe this player-trainer relationship isn't the right one and you might want to look elsewhere? Have you had to have that conversation? And if you have, what does that look like, or what does that sound like?
Yeah, those are definitely uncomfortable conversations, and you're going to have them as a trainer, especially trying to run your own business. And for me, I always try to go through the player first. No matter what the age is, if I feel like a player isn't living up to the standards that we have at our workouts, then I let them know first. And if they're kind of on their last legs, then I'll tell the player, hey, if this continues, then I'm going to have to go to your parents if they're a little bit younger. Or I'll tell them, hey, if this continues, then I might not be able to get you on the schedule for workouts because I have other kids, that might want that spot, or you're just kind of killing the workout that I'm doing for these other players and they're not getting as much out of it. But then when you talk to the parents, if you explain it to them in the with money in mind, it kind of sparks their interest a lot more. And they're willing to see how their son is kind of, or daughter is wasting their money and wasting their time, because if they're not going to change the things that their parent is coming in there they're bringing them in there and paying for them to change, then they're wasting their money, they're wasting my time, and they're wasting their parents' gas and time taking them to and from. So when I explain it to the parents in that regard, I've had some parents that have said, you know what, you're right. If he or she's not going to do this, and that, then it's not worth me putting all this time and energy. I could be sitting at home or spending this money on something else. And so I've had parents do that, but I've also had parents kind of go the other way and kind of get mad about that and then not come back for that reason. But and the thing is with the players and with the 4 Ps is not everybody's going to be perfect with that. I think that's like, people think trainers are only supposed to coach the skills. I think it's the little things that make you a great basketball player. And if your trainer isn't, and you go back to what your parents look for in a trainer, if your trainer isn't talking about, hustling and eye contact and being respectful and how to communicate and different things like the intangibles of basketball, then your trainer isn't fulfilling what they should be doing for your child. A lot of people just think it's about the skills and shooting and adding moves to your bag. But I think it's about becoming a well-rounded basketball player and a great teammate.
I think it's important. This is a word that comes up a lot on the podcast. You have to be intentional about that as a coach, as a trainer, that you make that a part of what you're doing on a daily basis. And I think you have to really think about that, because sometimes it's easy to get lost in the drills. It's easy to get lost in the minutia of the fundamentals or the particular move or skill that you're trying to teach. And sometimes we forget that there's this other piece of it too that you just described, that if you're not doing that, you're missing out on a great opportunity to impact the kid not only as a basketball player, but you're missing out on that opportunity to impact them as a human being. And I think just like a coach who's coaching their team, it's easy sometimes to get caught up and miss out on that. And to your point, I think that you have to be intentional about looking for those opportunities to teach the kid, hey, here's an opportunity where you got to hustle. Here's an opportunity where you got to look the coach in the eye, even when maybe they're telling you something that you need to hear, but you don't want to hear. Maybe they're telling you the truth about your game for the first time that somebody else hasn't told you, that you got to work on this or that this is a weakness. And I think those lessons are things that good coaches, good trainers try to impart as often as they possibly can. They look for those teachable moments so that they can have a greater impact on the kid than just strictly as a basketball player. And to me, that's so important when I think about what makes a good coach or what makes a good trainer. It's really somebody who's looking to develop, yes, the player's basketball skills, but also develop them as a human being. And that's really, I think, critical to the success of what really makes a good coach. As you've built your business, how have you handled the business side of the business? Because obviously you got into this to be out on the court, to work with players. That's where your passion lies. But in order to have a successful business, you have to do some other things. You have to have a website. You have to schedule. You have to keep the book. So how have you handled that business side of it? What part of that? What parts of that do you like? What parts of that do you not like? Have you outsourced any of it? Just describe sort of the behind the scenes process of building Committed to My Craft.
So behind the scenes, I would probably start with the accounting. I don't mind doing that because I was an accounting major in college. So that was a blessing to have an expertise in that and then go to run a business. And so that part has been pretty easy. The scheduling, as we talked about, I overlooked how much time I would spend scheduling. And it's time that you don't even realize, a Sunday evening that you're sitting on the couch and then next thing you know, I haven't said something to my wife in an hour. Or just I get home one night and then I have to, shore up some things for the schedule for the next day. That's something that I didn't think of when I was getting into it. And it's not the worst thing, but I wish I could outsource things like that. It's not necessarily in the budget yet. But I think with doing a website, I did a lot of the website and the online stuff during the pandemic. And so I was able to spend, a few days at home really working on that because, we all had to be home. So, but outside of that, I kind of got that up and running and haven't put too much time into it. But I focus a lot on the basketball that I need to spend more time on the business. And I was watching a video of another trainer that I really respect and learn a lot from. And he gave me that reminder in that video just a couple of days ago. But whenever you're an entrepreneur and you're starting to run a business, you're every part of that business. So if you don't do it, then it doesn't get done. And what I'm learning is sometimes you have to figure out what is really important to get done and what things you can kind of push off and not neglect a little bit, but handle when you have a little bit more free time. Because with the schedule, some days you might be in the gym from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. and you're not able to do all the outside stuff. And if you do that for a few weeks, then you have to take some time on a weekend or in the mornings to get everything else situated with the business side.
It's something that I think people tend to overlook is how important that those back end tasks can be to running a successful training business. Because if you're all over the place and you don't have a good website where people can find out more about you, because again, let's face it, everybody goes to the web immediately to check on, what's this all about and where can I go and what are the locations and who is this guy? Even if they hear about it through word of mouth, they still are going to go and check you out on there. And if you're disorganized on the back end, it makes whatever you do as a basketball coach much more limited because people just look at it and say, this thing is disorganized and it doesn't look the way it should. So running that back end of it is really, really important. And obviously your accounting background helps you in that way to be able to handle the financial piece of it. And then, as you said, during the pandemic, I think a lot of people taught themselves some new skills and learned some things that are going to help them over the course of their business. When you look ahead, do you see yourself eventually expanding, adding some more trainers so that people are working underneath you, or you've sort of taught them those 4 Ps, you've trained them to be ready to train players? Do you see that on the horizon? And if you do, how far away is that? And what do you think that's going to look like?
I definitely see the business expanding into more people. I've recently hired an intern. I should use the term hired lightly. He's been coming in and helping me out with workouts and learning. And his goal is to get coached up enough to where he can start to do his own sessions, under committed to my craft. And so we have that in the works, but I have ideas to turn it into more of just more of a business than just a sole entrepreneurship, and bringing in other trainers and being able to offer different types of sessions and have more availability for the people of the Dayton area. And my main goal is to get my own gym. And I think once I'm able to do that, then I think everything in regards to the business and adding more people will really start to take off.
Do you see yourself staying strictly in the player development side of it, in the training, or do you see if you were to get your own facility that you might consider jumping into creating an AAU club or something along those lines?
I don't know if I'm feeling the AAU scene yet. Talk to me in a few years, maybe when I have my own kids. But I like being able to work with players in the capacity that I am. If I were to get my own facility, that probably would be something that I would have to look into, because it's just another avenue to be able to help players and to be able to have more time with them to teach them, because that is the one area that you don't get to touch players on in the sense of them playing 5-on-5 and going through the adversity with them, and being able to tell them, that's your shot selection wasn't good tonight, or you didn't give us much effort on defense. That's the type of things that you're not able to get to the players on a lot of the times when you're just working with them as a trainer. And I think with the AAU team, those would be things that you can help players with and really go through with them. So that's definitely an interesting idea, but I don't know if I've completely wrapped my head around it yet.
I understand. It's not in the imminent expansion plans right now. I get it. How often do you get a chance to go and watch a player that you've trained play in, whether it's a high school game or an AAU game? Obviously, you're really busy with the training that you're doing, so it can make it tough to get to games, and you're spending a lot of time with their film, so it's not like you're not seeing them play. But do you get an opportunity occasionally to go out and see some of your players play live in an actual gym? And, of course, the pandemic has prevented that in a lot of cases as well over the last year and a half or so. But just talk a little bit about maybe getting out and seeing kids when they're actually playing in their games.
Yeah, so the last few years, it's kind of been a rare occasion for me to get to watch players because I coached with a high school girls team in the area. And so those were really the only games that I had much time to go to. And then I would still do in-season training as well. So if I was in the gym, I was either doing training or I was with our team. So any times that I had a night or a Saturday that I didn't have one of those two things and was able to go see a player, I would take advantage of it. But I'm excited for this season because this is going to be my first season as a trainer, not coaching. And so I'll have time to do my in-season workouts, but then to travel around and watch the players and be there live to support them. Because I think that's the biggest thing about watching a player live is just the support that you're there. And then you can talk to them after the game, because I can watch a lot of their film. Their parents can send it to me, or I can find it on the different websites and stuff. But I think being there to support players, especially when they know you drove, an hour to watch them play, or you took your Tuesday night to go watch their game and then give them a few tips afterwards. I think a lot of it is just continuing to build that relationship with the players.
Absolutely. That means everything. I think we talked earlier about building that trust, and just the fact that you're willing to show up at their game and sit in the stands and watch them. And hopefully we're going to be able to do that here in the state of Ohio with, I'm sure we're going to have masks on probably in a lot of schools. Maybe in some we won't. But it looks like we're going to be back to at least normal capacities in gyms. So I know I'm looking forward to the opportunity to go. And my son's a sophomore. I'm looking forward to going and sit in the stands and just watch games and not have it be only the parents in the stands. And I know that all the players are looking forward to being able to play in front of their classmates and play in front of bigger crowds than what they've been able to do certainly over the past season. Before we get close to the end here, I want to ask you one more question. It's a two-parter. When you look ahead over the next year or two and you think about what you've built with Committed to My Craft and where you're trying to go with it, what do you see as your biggest challenge? And then second part of the question, when you get up every morning and get out of bed, what puts a smile on your face? What brings you the most joy about what you get to do every day? So your biggest challenge and your biggest joy.
My biggest challenge. I would say my biggest challenge going forward will probably be being able to continue to operate my business at the level that I am now, even if I go through some different life changes. Because I'm 25, so I'm at that age where certain things might start happening. So I think that'll be probably my biggest challenging is managing all of that at the same time. But I think the biggest joy and the thing that puts a smile on my face is just the people that I get to work with, whether it's the players, the parents of the players, the brother of the player that comes into every workout and just sits on the side, the intern that I have, the different coaches that I talk to on the phone, just all of the people that I have met and that I interact with through basketball. They all just really put a smile on my face. And sometimes I'll be in the gym from the morning till nighttime, and I'll just be driving home thinking about how special it was that I got to be in the gym with those people that day. And I'm around some amazing people, and not just amazing in the sense that they're good at basketball, but just some really truly amazing people and down to earth, great human beings that are just a joy to be around and put work in. And to me, that's what keeps me going, is knowing that there's so many more people like that I can continue to meet in the game of basketball. You know, one of my mentors always says that basketball just has great people, and he just loves the people of basketball. And I really second that.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I think when you can wake up every day and feel that way about what you get to do and who you get to do it with, and I think that's one of the things that is special about the game of basketball, is that you get to have an impact on people using something that you love, and that in a lot of cases, the people that you're working with love. Not in every case, but in most cases, the people that you work with love the game and you love it. And to be able to use the game to have an impact on people, to me, there's nothing better than that. And when it comes to your challenge, I'm just going to say that you are 100% spot on. I'm going to leave it at that. We don't have to go into any more details. But I will tell you that you are 100% spot on, that will be a challenge for you to navigate, and I'm sure you'll figure it out. Your passion for training and for basketball and for your business and for the kids that you work with definitely comes through. We hear it on this end of the microphone without question. Before we wrap up, I want to give you a chance to share how people can find out more about Committed to My Craft, how they can reach out to you, share website, social media, email, whatever you want to share, how people who want to connect with you, find out more about what you're doing, how can they do that? And then I'll jump back in when you're done and wrap things up.
Okay, awesome. My Instagram is Committed to My Craft, and then my Twitter is Committed to MC. If you go online, you can type in committedtomycraft.com, and you can find my website, and there's a place where you can reach out to me on there. You can also send me a message on Twitter or Instagram. And then if you look up Committed to My Craft on YouTube, you'll find my YouTube channel, and there's a bunch of videos that I've done of my players for film study. If anybody wants to go on there and look at those.
Xander, we cannot thank you enough for taking the time out of your schedule. We're so glad that Mark Schultz connected us to you. This has been a lot of fun to talk to you about player development, about what you're doing, about what you've been able to build. I think there's a lot of people out there that are in this position where they'd love to start a training business, or they'd love to be a trainer or work with kids. And I think you've laid out a pretty solid blueprint of what it takes to be a successful trainer. So congratulations to you on getting that started. And again, we're so appreciative of you taking the time out of your schedule to join us tonight. And to everyone out there, thanks for listening, and we will catch you on our next episode. Thanks.
Thanks for listening to the Hoop Heads podcast, presented by Head Start Basketball.